Good morning, and welcome to KeyCode Media's Inputs Outputs, a new series dedicated to giving you short technical tutorials for the production, post, and audiovisual industries. Each presentation will run around 20 minutes and will be followed by a live Q&A with you, the audience. I'm your host, Jeff Sangpil, Chief Technologist here at KeyCode Media. There is no nonlinear editing system with as storied a history as Avid's Media Composer. From the beginning, back in 1987, Avid's flagship software swiftly moved to a position of the editorial platform most used in episodic television and film, which is still the case today in 2020. We'll be talking about the 2020 release of Media Composer today, which has required quite a bit of retooling under the hood and has added some new features along the way. Before we jump in, just to remind you, KeyCode Media is an industry-leading systems integrator with a small army of engineers specialized in broadcast, post-production, and audiovisual solutions. If you need equipment, we have it. If you have a complex problem, we've likely solved it. If you need support, our engineers are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have more Avid certified engineers than anyone else. Now I'd like to introduce Michael Krulik, Avid's video product evangelist, who's going to get into all the deets on this new release. Michael, the floor is yours. Before we get into the presentation, we invite all of you to participate in a live Q&A. Please submit your questions via the Vimeo, Facebook Live, or YouTube chats. We'll try our best to answer all of them.
All right, let's get started. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this demonstration, and thank you KeyCode for hosting. I do want to start off by saying that I hope that everybody, your friends, your family, everyone who's listening, I hope you all are doing well in this very different world that we're in. But again, thank you so much for joining. My name is Michael Krulik, the video product evangelist for Avid out of Los Angeles, and I am going to take you through the new Media Composer that we just released, Media Composer 2020.4. I do want to start off by saying that a lot of work has been done behind the scenes and under the hood with this software. Mainly, one of the big things we wanted to talk about is support for Catalina. So version 2020.4 of Media Composer is fully supported with the Mac OS of Catalina. This took a lot of time. We did want to make sure everything was done right, but we do want to let you know that we do support Media Composer on Catalina. But also a lot of things that were done to help replace our reliance on QuickTime libraries. So the things that we were doing for linking, importing, and exporting media, which was known as AMA and is linking, we now have another way to link to your media, which actually is so much better. Moving forward, it's going to give us so much more control and better support and better performance, actually. Even support for asymmetrical MOV files. So if your video or audio comes in a little earlier or later, independently, we don't truncate it as we did before. We actually insert silence or black instead. And also being able to work with 4K and larger than H.264. And I think you'll see here also that we are working in a future update to support H.265 as well. The power of UME actually has been in the software for several versions now. Again, this is all done under the hood. We snuck it in there, but this is how we actually supported and worked natively with OP1A media, and also working with our new distributed processing, where you can offload renders to idle computers in your facility. You can just set that up and send that off to go in the background. Another great thing that we've done is if you are working on a Windows system, we can now export a ProRes file, a ProRes MOV file or MXF OP1A or OP-Atom from your Windows system. So that is something in the software. It is there with 2020.4. Okay, I'll go ahead and get into the demo right now. And I'm sure you've seen that we did release a new UI, a new user experience with Avid Media Composer. This was done last year. So things like the paneled UI, everything is sort of locked in to your display, but you can actually pull out bins. So if you do want your bins floating, you can set that up. I am working on a single display on a laptop at home. But you could be on a dual display with a bin monitor and edit monitor, and your canvas can go across both displays. And you have your task-oriented workspaces down the right side here, which gives you instant access to going into color, effects, audio, and you can even set up a whole series of customized workspaces as well. And you can hide that if you want the real estate back. So some really nice stuff with the new UI. I'm not going to go into that. I do want to hit on the features in 2020.4. And I did mention UME. So what I first want to show you is if I open up a bin right here, and let's say I want to link to some media. And I'm going to go to my Nexus workspace. Here I have some drone clips. What you'll see is the media is actually linking with, well, it says QuickTime, even though I said we are not relying on QuickTime anymore. If you do have QuickTime installed and the media does need QuickTime, it can use it, or it's going to use the UME format, the new Universal Media Engine, to link. So I can select all of my clips here. I'll say link, and we'll see that it's actually linking using whatever mechanism is necessary for your control. So again, UME, built into the software, all under the hood, linking and giving us better control and performance with our linking tools. Beyond that, let me go back to, or let me close the project and show you the new project management window. What we've done is we've made this, a lot more visual. The visual representation of your projects can come in the form of your names. You can actually set up a poster frame. So when you are inside of Media Composer, if you right click on your source or your record window at a certain frame, that will become the representative poster frame in your project management window. Your columns, you can actually move the columns around. You can sort by column project type, by raster dimension, by name. You will get a default icon of Media Composer if you do not select your poster frame, so that will come up. You can choose, again, what you want in the project. You can change the size. You can right-click and actually change the font size of your window here. So, change the font size, go back. And you'll also have a frame mode. So the frame view gives you just the poster frame, again, give you a nice visual way to go into your project. Now, another thing we have is the sidebar here. So you'll see I'm currently at the select project portion. If I select what's new, this basically is going to show me what's new in the latest versions. So if I go and open up any of the versions here, we'll actually see a little overview of what's new. So you don't have to go and dig through the documentation. You can actually get all that information here, which is great for the seasoned Media Composer editor who just wants to know what's new. You can see it all right here. And for somebody who may not know, let's see, Inspector Tool. If I click on the little information button, it actually takes me to local documentation online for the Inspector Tool. So again, a nice way for the new editor or for the seasoned editor to actually get information for what's new. Now we also have the selecting new project. This is if I'm going to create a new project, pretty much the same as we had before, but what we have done is changed how you choose the location of your projects. You're not selecting a little radio button for external or local. You're actually going to navigate to either your Nexus storage space or wherever your projects are right here. And you still have your formats, custom. If you didn't know, custom, you can create all of those odd formats. Even Quibi 9:16 can be created right here, but you have all of your 8K, 16K, 4K, 2K, UHD, all of the standard formats and frame rates selectable here. All right, we'll go back into our little demo project. And let's take a look at some other features that have been added with Media Composer 2020.4. Okay, so let's take a look in this bin right here. Now, how many untitled sequence or copies of copies or new clips do you have? And imagine trying to go in and rename all of the individual clips or individual sequences here. Here you'll see untitled sequence, copy, 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 copy. I've done some transcodes here, so I have the .news. So I can select all of the clips now in the bin. I go to right-click or the fast menu, and I can select bulk edit. And what bulk edit does is that gives me a way to go in and change and modify column data. So any of this data, or data, however you want to call it, is I want to change the name of all of the names of the clips right here. We see on the right side how it's going to be modified for everything that's been selected. And this is where I can go in and choose what I want to replace it with. So I'm going to change the name column. I could choose all the master clips, subclips, or sequences, so I don't even have to select them. I could just say all master clips. And I'm going to change the specific text to be drones, a little underscore, and what you're seeing on the right here is they're all going to be renamed drones. But I can start adding multiple pieces of information. Maybe I'd also want that to be, it's an episode, so we'll do EP3, add a little underscore. And it added EP3. But now I need another differentiator. Maybe I want to use a column piece of data. Or I could go in and say I want to add a counter. And this counter is now going to give me 8 different named files here. We can even go in and change. We'll just do 2 digits. Once I hit commit, watch what happens here in the bin as they're now all changed in the bin. But again, this could also be any other data that you have gone in and created. So let's say I want to add, some comments. I'm going to say this was a drone shot of New York. This is a drone shot of LA. This is a drone shot of the UK. So now I've gone in and I'm designating, this could be any sort of comment or again, any column that you have gone in and created. So now, let's say I want to go in and grab all of those clips. We'll go to bulk edit. And I now want to say, let's just go ahead and keep the name there. So I'm going to do the column data is going to stay the name, but I also want to add another underscore. And I want to add a specific piece of column data, which is the comments. And it's now adding those extra comments to those when I say commit. And again, this can be on sequences as well, or subclips. So if I right click and select bulk edit, I'm going to say choose, if I say all masters, I don't see anything until I say all sequences. And now I can rename all the sequences to be rough. And we'll just add a counter. All right, so rough sequences, commit, and those all change. So bulk edit, a great way to not have to go in and do that tedious work of naming every file individually. You can actually do a multiple select and change any data in there. You'll also see that your bins, the tabs can now be colored, or you can color the entire bin itself. And also, if you're familiar with the bin map, we've actually gone in and changed the transparency. So if you take a look, what used to happen is you would see more of the larger frames behind there, but now we've just changed the transparency so the bin map stands out a little more. Now, bin map was really a great feature. A lot of people like that, but what we've done with 2020.4 is we've added that to your timeline. So if I go to my timeline settings, you'll see that you do have a sequence map selection. And I'm going to select to open the sequence map as an overlay in the timeline. And the sequence map can be selected here. It can be added to a key or to a button, which I've done right here. And you'll see I now get an overall view of my sequence. Now, the great thing about this is if I've zoomed in to a portion of my sequence, if you have an hour-long or a feature-length sequence, you're scrolling back and forth, you're moving around trying to find things. Again, I can hit the sequence map, and now I have a nice little visual representation that I could map through. Now, if I've gone in and changed that, so I don't want to have it come up as an overlay, it comes up as a panel, which can float, or because I can panelize my entire UI, I can take that and drop it into a separate panel. And that could be a workspace. So I could save that and use that later. A lot of people didn't know that you could mute clips. So if I start going through and muting clips, let me just grab a bunch of them. Let's go to, just going to grab multiple selects, shift select here, 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 here. So I'm just grabbing a bunch of clips to go in and right click and mute. So now imagine you have a half-hour show, an hour-long show, a lot of clips here, and now you need to find out where those muted clips are. Well, I don't want to have to go through and step through my entire sequence and find it. Now we have a select muted clips, And all I have to do is now unmute, and it brings them all back. Very fast, again, taking out any tedious work in my sequence to find that. Now, something that we heard from a lot of editors is if you start going in and deleting any windows here, let's say I'm in audio and I delete my mixer, things shift and move. Whenever I see something shifting and moving, I think that something happened in my sequence, or I deleted something or moved something I didn't want to. And it was very disruptive. So what we've added with 2020.4 is the ability to add what we call a blank panel. And this blank panel is just that. It's a panel that I could take and drop into my UI that is just a blank panel. And the nice thing about the blank panel is I can now take any tool and I can drop that into that blank panel. But if I delete that, it doesn't shift everything. It doesn't disrupt what I'm doing. So you can actually go in and create a look with all of these blank panels and save that out. But we also have an option under Settings, which lets you, when you close a docked panel, it'll replace it with a blanked panel. So if I select that, we'll apply it. We'll go back to the audio UI here. So now if I close the audio mixer, it automatically puts a panel in that place. So you don't even have to think about it. So you could design it with a blank panel, or you could have the blank panels come up when you delete any panel from the UI. Now, there are also other tools in Avid products that we like to use in our other products. And that brings me to a feature called Strip Silence. Now, Pro Tools has Strip Silence in the software. And the idea is that if there's any silence where somebody's, maybe not talking, maybe there's an interviewer speaking and you want to cut out where the interviewer is speaking, in the background. So that's what's happening actually here in this interview with Chris McCaleb. I'm going to select all of my audio. I can go to Strip Silence from the sequence. Again, this can be mapped. And I can choose even a region. So if I mark an in and an out, I can say just strip the silence from that area. Choose the silence threshold, the minimum duration, and even some padding. So that's going to not strip it right to where he speaks. Maybe put a little pad on that so there's a little lead in. And watch what happens as I strip the silence. You'll see that it does take that out. So one of the top feature requests with Media Composer had to do with the effect palette. Now, we've always been able to change the size of fonts in the bin, in the Composer window, in the Timeline window, but never in the effect palette. Well, now in 2020.4, you right-click in the effect palette, you set your font, and you now can change the font size in the effect palette. Yes! And you also have the little slider bar if you need to expose or hide any of your effects that you're trying to find as well. So I think that's pretty huge. All right, well, let's take a look at the Avid Titler Plus. So these titles were made in the Avid Titler Plus. They are real time. Just to show you how quickly you can go in and make them, if I mark an in and an out in my sequence, I hit the Avid Titler Plus. It could be mapped to a key. I get my little mini menu here, or if I want to start typing, we click. Krotzer. Take that, position that. If I want to change the color, double click, choose the color I want, change the font. Again, just very easy. The nice thing is as you change the font, you actually can see what the font will look like. And you can do, some basic shapes. So squares, if I do just draw a square, it does come in and it as an exact square. But if I'd rather that be freeform, if I hold down Shift when I create it, I can actually create a freeform bar for that. Take that, we'll put that behind the name, change the color, we'll make that yellow, take off the shadow. So again, just quickly going in, changing that, changing the order, and nice. Okay, just go in and make that white. All right, really fast and easy. But one thing that we added is being able to create templates. So just like you can go in and create an effect, drag that effect to a bin and reuse it, you can do the same thing now with preset looks. So you'll see if I go to my titles here, I have Gabriola White, Palatina Teal. I have all these different fonts that I can simply go in and drop it onto, let's do it on Kate Haight right here. So let's take Catherine's name right here. And if I simply grab, let's see, Georgia Yellow, drag that down here, you'll see it actually changes. So the nice thing is it's not changing what is written, it's just changing the font parameters, colors, drop shadow, anything that's set up as a preset to just drag and drop on there. And just another little simple thing, if I go in to draw shapes or text, we can go in now. If you select, there's a little widget to the left of the color box. If you select that, you can now go in and add gradients to your text or your shapes. Again, little things added, a lot more things coming with the Avid Titler Plus, so stay tuned. Okay, so just to talk about several other things that we added quickly to Media Composer 2020.4. You can actually set color spaces. You see we can do HLG, all the HDR different color spaces you can set up from ingest to edit to finish, but we've also added up to 16 more color spaces to the ACES, the Academy Color Encoding System. So it does default to a 32-bit float project throughout the entire pipeline. This media right here of Chris actually was Rec 709, so HD. So if I do want to actually put this so it looks like it is working in an ACES workflow, all I have to do is go in and change the adapter that's applied to that. So I'm simply going to say, put the Rec 709 to ACES color on Chris. When I apply it, you'll see that it actually looks like he is in the ACES color space. And another thing that we added is if you do go to your color correction, we've added more granularity to the changes of the sliders and also your color wheels. I know I'm getting a little short in time, but I do want to talk about something that we also have added, is our ability to work in different formats and frame rates. Now again, I mentioned this before when you create a custom project, but if you are creating something for Quibi or a one-to-one project, you can set that up. Now our Quibi workflow is you do create a UHD project and you cut everything in at UHD, so you are making editorial decisions on a horizontal sequence initially, but Quibi does require a vertical version as well. And a couple of ways we can create that, if you do go to your source settings and use FrameFlex, you'll see that we do have a frame aspect ratio of 9:16 now. I could actually use FrameFlex to go in and choose my area of interest for my vertical version, which is great. But we also can set up masked margins. So if I go to my project settings and go to masked margins, you'll see that we also have the 9:16 format that can be assigned with masked margins. And then when I'm editing, again, I could be editing my horizontal sequence, I turn on my target mask to be, mapped to white, black, or black mask, and I'm now seeing the actual area that would be extracted when I create my vertical version. So I can go in and create a brand new sequence without having to go out of the project. I'm making editorial decisions. We have Kate and Doc talking at the same time, so I've cut them in on top of one another. Any text, any titles, any graphics. Again, you're making a decision whether it's going to be fit horizontally or vertically. And then I would create a new project in Media Composer. That new project format would be 9:16, which I've done right here for the vertical version. So now I open up that sequence that I created vertically in this project, and then I simply export it. Export it whatever format I need. I do want to point out options. If I do export an MOV file, I can choose H.264, I can choose ProRes, I am on a PC, and I can choose what ProRes format I do want to export. So quick overview. I just want to again give you the highlights. So I think we're going to be able to open it up now for some questions and answers. So thank you.
Right, now we're live with Q&A. If you have questions, please put them in the Vimeo, Facebook, or YouTube chats, and we'll get those picked up, and we'll ask Michael.
Do we have any questions to start?
We certainly do. Since you're in the titler, let's see, Martin and Richard had some questions about the titler, basically asking about stability, UI, image quality. Are there further plans to continue revisions or possibly a complete overhaul of Titler Pro on the roadmap in the future?
I wouldn't say a complete overhaul, but there definitely are more features that are coming. I've seen, I don't want to talk about futures, but I mean, Titler Plus is definitely, I'm just going to close the window here, so I'm going to go out of frame.
Sure.
That may help a little. So there definitely are enhancements coming, and this has evolved a lot since when it first came out, to the point where you would click and the title would move someplace else. So even being able to have control on what you're selecting to go in and create. The interesting thing here is if you click inside, you can type. If you double click, it does the first word you're on. If you do a double click, it will do all of them. So you just need to be aware of what you're selecting. Plus, we do have buttons here that will actually step you through. You'll see as I click, it's stepping you through the different layers. So easy access to all the different elements. You can group, you can move. You do have the shapes if you do want to draw things. The nice thing here in the mini menu is it's only showing you what is currently active for that element. So if I turn off shadow, I don't get shadow. I can turn that on. I could turn on edge. I could turn on, framing. So all of these can be turned on and off easily just to go in and create things. So again, it has better, and it's just going to keep evolving. But this will be the new titler moving forward. If you do have old titles, there is an option when you go to the title tool to promote that to the Avid Titler Plus. So that'll take that title, and then you can add any of these enhancements to that. So cool. Stay tuned. More to come.
Very cool. Couple questions about UME. First one from Eric. Maybe it's a basic question. I've been away on a journey with Resolve. Longtime Avid editor, 25 years plus. One thing I like about Resolve is that it does not have to transcode all media ingested into the system. Is UME the way that Avid is dealing with this? Please explain.
UME is a number of things. UME is getting rid of our reliance on QuickTime mainly. We actually brought in UME, if you're doing any OpenEXR, when we brought in the ability to work natively OP1A, that actually was using the UME technology. And moving forward, UME is just going to open up what we're doing to, I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me. So you can actually work with higher than 2K. It's even giving us better and faster transcodes and exports. So what we're finding is people who are using the new 2020.4 are finding that the software is a little zippier, that the performance is better, and they are getting faster exports. I'm trying to think of what else. UME is, again, used for OpenEXR. When you do an export, the UME is also what's being used to export to ProRes. So if you are on Windows, the reason why we can export to ProRes is using the new UME file export option.
So question from Fred along the same vein. He's still living in the AMA world, but does UME still need plugins from camera manufacturers, codec platforms, that sort of thing?
No, because again, depending on the camera manufacturer, I'm not going to say no, because I think Red uses their own plugin, but I think anything that uses QuickTime is where we'd be pulling that from. So what you'll see, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the screen share again, is if you go to, let me go to link to some media. The power of UME is if I go to the source browser and I do go to look at some media here, what you'll see is the plugin that's being used. If you do have QuickTime installed and the file requires QuickTime, you can select that, but you'll see everything else is going to default to UME. So if I didn't have QuickTime, this would probably use UME as its linking mechanism. So again, it's just a matter of getting rid of that reliance on QuickTime that is inherent these days now.
Understandable. While we're talking about QuickTime, Rex had a question: is exporting as a QuickTime reference effectively dead now? The reason I ask is that was how I would export files, media as DNX36, then send to Apple Compressor to make a ProRes or H.264 file so that I could avoid the QuickTime gamma shift issue. Does the new media engine solve this?
What was the first part of that question? Does the
QuickTime reference, is it effectively dead?
Let's see. I'm going to see what happens. Let's do an export. I think it's still there. Yep, QuickTime reference is still there. But you'll notice as I move down into the different options, these are actually AMA style exports. So you'll see even the name, we still, even though we got rid of what AMA is, it's still using that
the moniker
technology to actually export. If I go down to OpenEXR or MOV, you're seeing it's now using UME. So I think maybe stuff will start moving more into UME, but I think we still will have the QuickTime ref output if you need that.
It'll be, yeah, that'd be interesting to find out if that exists in the Mac version. That may have been gotten rid of because it's not there in the OS anymore.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Getting into a question about Pro Tools and is it any issues with Media Composer and Pro Tools working on the same Mac system on Catalina?
I
have an answer for that. The answer is no. There's a compatibility between the two. They're trying to work it out.
Yes, that is a Catalina issue, right?
Yeah, it was fine under Mojave, and then the latest OS update broke it.
Okay.
So separate platforms for the two systems
At this point.
Yep. So Ed Marks was asking, hey, I use multi-screen. Is it possible to set up blank so that it reads the desktop rather than the black frame?
So you're talking about the blank panel or just the desktop as a...
I think so. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Well, currently I'm on just a laptop. So you'll see here, if I go to host panels, I only get one selection. If you do have multiple displays set up, all you have to do is enable those displays here in host panels, and the canvas or the whole gray background will go and span across all of your displays. And then you can take your panels and move them where they want, whether they're blank panels or tools. One thing I do want to point out here, because I did have a customer ask several months ago about, you can go in and pull out tools and you can float things, but they wanted everything pulled out so that they could go in and start moving things around. Well, we have put in there, and this has been in there since the beginning, if you go under Windows, float all panels. So that actually will take all the panels, it'll pull them off of the canvas so you can then go and rearrange them all if you want, or keep them all floating. But the thing you do need to realize is you will still have a blank gray block or canvas in your background. So you're not going to get that ability like you used to have on a Mac system where you could go into that little space between two bins to bring up your desktop.
Personally, I always hated that. It's like, dang it.
It's 50-50. Some people are like, I like that. Some people are like, I hated that. So Again, we're trying to satisfy a lot of people's different ways on how they use the system.
Exactly. So Joe was asking, when renaming clips in the batch edit function, can you keep the original file name but still have the new file name?
I guess there's a couple of ways to work with that. If I have clips here and I go into bulk edit, again, you can go in, if you right click, I'm just going to say bulk edit. It's going to choose, I could say all master clips. If I do choose all sequences, since there are no sequences in this bin, I don't get any results. So it's just a quick way to, if you have a bin of 500 clips, you don't have to go and select them all. You can just say choose all master clips. So it is changing whatever column you are modifying. So you'll see if I pull this down, if you can modify a column, that's what you can go in and change. And you're seeing what the results would be here. So if you do want to change the name, anything you add in here is going to change the name. So if you want to keep that, create a new column, and you can put whatever you want in that, and it'll be two completely independent things that can be modified. But I also want to show here, which is actually kind of cool, if I go into the bulk edit function and go to column data, if I pull down from what column, this is only showing me the columns that I currently have open in my view in my bin. If I go into my columns and I turn all of them on, what you'll see is if I go to bulk edit, all master clips, and go to column data, it's showing me every column. So whether you customize a column, whether you want to bring on one that is already set up with any information, if you have a red camera, you would get all of the red metadata and parameters that you could select from to change in a bulk fashion. So it's actually, it gets that deep. One thing I do want to let everybody know is when you hit commit, it commits. There currently is no way to undo what you did. So that's why we try to give you every bit of precaution as to what's going to be modified. Just check that out before you do it. Word to the wise.
Right. Or know really how to use your attic. Go back, get something.
Right, exactly. Go to that attic.
So question from Putney Alfred Swope. Can you resize column widths?
Can you resize what? I'm sorry?
Resize column widths.
Resize column lists. You currently cannot at this point. I know that is a request that people have been asking. I know we used to be able to do it. It does actually resize depending on the longest name of your clip name. And also we do have the bin left lock. So if you do decide you do want to keep something exposed at one point, if you just move this little icon, now when you go and move, it actually keeps everything to the left. So at least we do have all that information exposed.
Kind of like Excel.
Right.
Another question from Putney, which I think will also be a free feature request. Could Avid make a Visio flow chart to show detailed workflow guides that show menus and settings to get from various input transform devices through Avid to various deliverables?
I think that there's a lot of visual work to be done there. If there's Visio drawings, I know Putney, I've seen your comments online a lot asking for that, and I think whether we have something. I think there were some documents. I don't think there are any quote unquote Visio documents at this point, but I'll see about revisiting that and see what we can do. But we don't have any Visio documents as of yet.
Okay. Amy is asking, is there a way to prevent the bin container feature from appearing in every bin?
The bin container feature, for those of you that don't know or may not have seen, we created what was called the bin container when we first introduced the new UI. And what that is basically when we didn't have a project window. And what that meant is if you pulled out a bin, you had this little sidebar that you could open or close to expose what was our new quote unquote project window, but you could close it if you didn't want to see it. Sort of freaked people out a little bit because the bin container didn't seem the same as it was, where actually it was, but we didn't have a project window. In the next version, we did bring in the project sidebar, which brings this up, which means the bin container doesn't have to have the sidebar also open to duplicate that. The bin container, and I'm sorry, I think I may be getting way off track on the answer to the question here, but the cool idea about the bin container is the bin container can be pulled out and exposed across the entire monitor. So if you have a bin monitor, you can now go in and create a very interesting layout which contains all of your bins. So that can be, tabbed bins. There can be, that could be your images. That could be, again, however you want to select it. So the idea of a bin container is still always going to be there, but you can decide if you do want to float those or not. So Again, the bin container can float, individual bins can float. We can take those and drop them back into our panels as well.
Awesome. Simon is wondering, does Titler Plus support the Arabic language?
Funny enough, I want to say yes. I was at IBC last year, and somebody came up and I showed the Titler Plus. So if you do have the Arabic keyboard loaded in, we should be able to take the Arabic keys and do that. I know I did that using the Avid Titler Plus in September last year. So the answer is yes.
I think I'd seen that before too. So,
yep.
Samuel's asking, when using the 3D warp effect, is there a way to scale only the layer with the effect on it?
So my thoughts, or what you're thinking, is typically Avid brings in everything and sizes everything down when you do a 3D warp. I believe it's still, that's part of the legacy software. We can try and do it, but I think it still doesn't just do that one layer. It may do everything. You may need to step in to that effect to go into the single layer to be able to move that independently. It doesn't act as the way you think it may, depending on when you're doing your 3D warp. If that's answering your question right.
Let's see. Bruce is asking, subframe audio editing. Is it here yet?
The only subframe audio editing is only done as a source setting. So if I have a clip of audio, so here we have Doc, we do not do subframe in the sequence, but if you do go to your source settings and go to audio, this lets us do, it's basically by perf. So I can go in and slip by a perf on the audio here. But again, this is a source setting. So if I apply this, it's actually changing that perf slip to the source. It's still not doing anything inside of the sequence. So partially there, being able to do some type of subframe slipping. But again, just like frame flex, any LUTs or any color that you add to your source, audio can be slipped. And you can choose here, if you want one or two perf frames earlier, 4 perf 3 earlier, or whatever, or custom. You could type in what sort of samples you want, or you could slip and slide visually here. And again, that's happening on the source side.
Awesome. And then Eric, he was asking, does everything still have to be transcoded to use an Avid? And then he followed up with, how is media ingested in the new Avid?
It all depends, number one, on your CPU, your RAM, your media. Again, we're seeing great performance here. I mean, I always go back to Paul Matchless, the editor of Baby Driver, who cut the pilot of Fleabag, linking on, what was that, several years ago, linking to 2K media using the linking AMA mechanism, and edited the pilot without a problem. So I'd say if you're doing 4K and you have a real beefy, system, maybe it'll work. It's difficult to say because I don't know what you're working on or what media you have. Ultimately, everybody knows if you transcode to Avid media, you're just going to have the best experience. And depending on your deliverable, you may not need to go back to the high res. You can still link to the high res back in Avid, or you can send it to Finish and Resolve like a lot of people do as well, just taking the AAF. So I want to say the answer is yes, you can link and work, but it does depend on your configuration.
Yep. Storage, memory, computer, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
All put it together.
Go to KeyCode. They're your partner. They'll make sure it works for you, or how to make it work.
We'll get you a system that can work. So we got 2 more questions. What's the timeline for 2020 use with Media Central? Impending install of Media Central, and told 2018.x is still the recommended version at this point.
I believe we are working on some long-term maintenance updates for the 2018 versions to actually be able to work with all of that as well. So I would say stay tuned.
Okay. In MP4 export, is that available?
MP4 export. I don't believe so. No. I don't even know. Can you do that if you set up a?
Yeah, it might be a custom option there.
MP4?
Yeah, MP4.
MP4?
Yeah. And the thing is, that's the QuickTime dialog box. So
correct. So QuickTime I had installed on here. If you don't have it installed, you probably won't see that.
Correct. And then let's see, we'll go for a good one for the last. A whole bunch of great questions here, folks. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. Has the way Avid works with image files been updated to the way other NLEs work with some of them? One example is pan and zoom being able to work with images the way that moving pictures did 20 years ago.
Moving pictures, yes. Pan and zoom, basically what we did to replace that was used FrameFlex, which gave you a lot, I guess, more interesting type movements. That the thing is with pan and zoom is you had to put in a slug of an edit, then you had to go to the effect, and then you had to choose what you wanted to actually use as the pan and zoom. The Ken Burns documentary style movement or to video. The problem with some of those effects is it would blow up the image and you could potentially lose quality. So if you haven't used, or if FrameFlex is an option for you, FrameFlex, these interviews are 2K. If I go to my source settings in FrameFlex, you'll see the image size here, but I could go in and choose an area of interest that is a little closer. It's going to give me great quality, but if I take this zoom in, which we apply, and then say I want to take that clip and drop it into a sequence, what I can do in the effect editor is I now can go in and start keyframing. So the keyframe will give me this really great pan and zoom style effect that I can go in and, modify, change. And it also gives me, if you haven't worked with the advanced keyframer, if I zoom in or open these up, I can control it with shelf, linear, spline, or even Bezier control to go in and smooth any movement. So a lot better control, so you can do your nice smooth movements of ease in and out when you do want to do this is the end result of that amazing effect I did. Again, a lot more smooth, and FrameFlex lets you keep the amazing quality of your images.
And the other thing is, I believe moving picture wasn't going to be continuing development with Catalina, so you kind of need to make a change if you're dealing with a lot of stills. Prometheus Entertainment, talking to you. So let's take one last quick question. Any plans to update the effects editor panel? Always been some issues. Can't delete effects directly from the window. Some effects overtake the nesting system.
Currently, I don't know of any changes that are going to be made to the effect palette. Or are you saying the effect palette or the effect editor?
The effect editor.
Oh, the effect editor. Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything about that. So if it is a feature request, feel free to either send it into KeyCode or myself, and we're happy to at least put it in. Currently, I don't know of any changes that are happening to the effect editor itself.
Awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. We're just about out of time. My apologies to Matt Damon. So if you've got anything you need to talk about with regarding Media Composer, please feel free to reach out to KeyCode. We can help you out. We can get you hooked up. Systems and questions about software, questions about support. We've got a lot of folks who know a lot about Avid. Michael, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you very much, and thanks KeyCode and everyone who's here. Thank you.
And always good to see the film reel over your left shoulder. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I need to get the moviola in here.
Nice. Well, I mean, we got one downstairs too. So, again, thanks for taking the time. And any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again, and everyone have a great and safe day.
All right. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.